Oh, you damn right. Let's talk a little recruiting on a Wednesday because recruiting never stops. It's the recruiting hour. This guy just got back from Dallas. He's probably glad he's not in Dallas right now because over the next couple of days it's going to be super, super cold. He wasn't even super cold in Dallas because of modern football stuff. We'll get to that. The Under Armour camp. We'll start with a big discussion, literally, figuratively, with Felix Ojo, the offensive line. We will jump right into it. I'm Chad Hastings. That's Jason Sukamel, of course. And we're brought to you by Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John and his crew doing great work. We told you John is a lifelong UT guy. 6 siblings, his wife, they're all UT grads. How about this? If you were in the Moody Center for Texas over LSU on the women's side of basketball, so was John. He made the trip in for that one on Sunday. He wants to celebrate that big win by offering all Orange Bloods fans a free 90-minute private consultation to learn how working with a certified financial planner like John can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your legacy. So you can call John and the Longhorn Wealth team at 972-707-4900 or go to longhornwealth.net to schedule that free 90-minute private consultation. Congrats again to that Texas women's basketball team. They are on a roll right now with, I believe it's 10 straight wins, multiple wins over top 10 teams, multiple wins over top 5. They just did something that no women's basketball team had done, I think, in 20 or 25 years in terms of, I think it's 3 straight wins against a top 10. So congrats to Vic Schaefer and his crew. They get a little time off just like the men do right now in a little bit of a break. Next Monday, I think it's the next women's game, and the fellas don't play until this Saturday. But shout out to that Longhorn success and to Longhorn Wealth Management Group. All right, Jason, let's jump on in for some recruiting talk. And we previewed this camp that you were going to get to go to. You were talking about the different guys that, you might be able to see, guys you ultimately were able to see. And I could tell when I saw the 3-2-1, when it started with Felix Ojo, I just kind of was like, okay, here we go. Let's find out about this badass tackle and just how good he is. You got to see him up close. So let's jump in here on Felix Ojo and how good you thought he performed at the camp.
Yeah, always good to see Felix, man. I've seen him quite a bit recently. I saw him in January down at the Navy All-American Bowl. I saw him at the Texas Junior Day, and then obviously this past weekend. How good is he, Chad? He's really, really good. Rivals moved him up quite a bit in their rankings after that Navy All-American Bowl. They've got him number 3 in the state. He was number 2, but Boobie Feaster reclassifying bumped Felix down to number 3. There was a time, I'm looking at his ranking history, he went from not being ranked in the Rivals 100 to 78th, and now he's at number 29. So he's made a big jump over the last several months. But and it's deserved. He was dominant at this camp. He was really good at the Navy All-American Bowl down in San Antonio. This camp, I said it in my post-game notes when I got home. I said, he was the best player to me at the camp, and it wasn't really that close. I mean, it was a pretty big drop off between him and, guys like Boobie Feaster and some of the other studs that were there. So, Boobie, I get it, is rated a little higher, but I thought Felix was the most dominant player at this camp. A couple guys, John Turntine wasn't able to make it. Max Wright, the Texas commitment, who's from Melissa. The camp was in Melissa. He was ill, so he wasn't able to make it. So, but it was a really good offensive line group still, and Felix Ojo was the cream of the crop. 6'7", legit 6'7", and I've seen him before. He told me they weighed him in at 280. Or no, I'm sorry, 273 is what he weighed at this camp, 273. Okay. And he said that's actually down, 7-ish pounds because he's playing basketball. Plays center, but it helps with his footwork, helps him stay in shape. But, just a tremendous frame. You look at it, you just look at him, and it's like, whoa, that guy has an NFL frame. You can just project it already. So, big-time player. Texas is heavily involved there. They're going to have to fight for him just because he's such a big-time player, but there's nobody I'd put above Texas right now in that race.
So in terms of these camp situations, Jason, I guess if you're a tackle like this, there's 2 ways for you to stand out. in comparison to the other tackles that are there. And you kind of laid that out a little bit about who may not have been there. But how about the DNs he would have been facing in any one-on-ones? Like, were you able to feel like you were seeing like-to-like talent in terms of who he was dealing with defensively?
There were some good defensive ends there. KJ Ford, Zane Rowe, 2027 standout. I'm trying to remember who exactly. I don't think Felix matched up with them individually. It was just kind of the luck of the draw, if you will. They just kind of rotate these guys in 5 at a time. So 5 offensive linemen, they'll pull them out and then they'll rotate in 5 more. So, but if you're at an Under Armour camp, Chad, you're a good player. It's an invite only camp. So it may not have been a Rivals 100 caliber player that he was going up against each rep, but they're all going to be talented players at these camps. They're invite only. They don't get bite. Most guys there have multiple scholarship offers. So I don't think he matched up with KJ Ford directly. But again, good players he matched up with and just handled them all with ease.
If you want to jump into the chat, feel free. We'll grab a chat from Xavier here real quick. But remember, if you want to throw a super chat in, donate a little something to the old tip jar, we would appreciate it. And that'll go right to the top of the list. While you were talking, Jason, Xavier shot us this one. Who do they like more, Ojo, Turntine, or Green for offensive tackle?
That's it. He said, who do they like more? I misread that. I thought he said, who do I like more? It's an interesting question because they're telling Ojo that he is their top guy. Okay, that's what they told him at the junior day. But you got to remember, Ojo was there. John Turntine wasn't. Cody Green's the offensive lineman who's committed to Oregon, who's going to visit Texas officially in June. But so it's a little bit of coach speak sometimes. I tell you this, they would take any one of those 3, Xavier, or hopefully 2 of those 3 is what Texas would love to have happen and be ecstatic. Ojo and Turntine, different players. Like I said, Ojo's a legit 6'7", Turntine's probably 6'4". Ojo is a pure 100% tackle. I think Turntine is too, but I think Turntine could slide inside. Green is at looking. We've got him at 6'6", 290. So again, more of a pure tackle. But they're all 3 really good players. They're all Ojo and Turntine are 5-star type talents. Let me see what Cody Green. He is just outside the Rivals 100. So they told Ojo, hey, you're our top guy, and our primary focus on in-state guys is you and Turntine. So Texas wants to get both those guys. Obviously, they're bringing in Green and some others for official visits as well. But Texas needs. They got Max Wright committed. They need at least probably 2 other tackles. So they're going to take probably 3 tackles or maybe as many as they can get in this class. So if they could get 2 out of those 3, Xavier, that you listed, Kyle Flood, Steve Sarkisian would be ecstatic.
Xavier, thank you for that chat. Jason, as I was reading through your notes, this will be a little nerdy, I understand, but I was fascinated by some of the comments.
I would expect nothing less from you, Jack.
That's right, exactly.
Even though you do have a Judas Priest shirt on, right? Is that what I see there?
I do, yes.
All right, that's a throwback from my childhood, yeah. So
there you go. Got a little priest going. Today. So the comment that I was interested in terms of the comment that involved him and Turntine, and it is, quote, the top 2 priorities in Texas are me and John, talking about Turntine. And I focused in on the article that he chose because I thought, wait a minute, the top 2 priorities in Texas are me and John. Is he speaking as the entire state, or was he trying to say the top 2 targets for Texas, as in the Longhorns, would be he and John Turntine? So I know that's nitpicking. I get it, but I just started to think about, would Sark nod his head and say, oh yeah, those are my top 2 targets? Or Jason, would he tell us, hey guys, I'd love to get one or the other, but I'm not necessarily putting everything in on, I got to get both of those guys?
I think both. I think that Sark would tell you, yeah, those are their top 2 targets, but also they would love to get, obviously they have to get one. They'd love to get both. But they do have some out-of-state guys. Cody Green, Sam Utu is a guy out of California that's scheduled to visit. There's a couple other out-of-state guys that Texas has offered. So they do have some out-of-state guys they're recruiting. But yeah, I think in terms of the offensive lineman in-state, it is John Turntine and Felix Ojo as the top guys. And that's no disrespect to, Max Wright and Zayden Krempin and some of these other guys that they're still recruiting in-state. But, I think Texas needs pure no-brainer tackles. Those guys certainly fit the bill. They're both in the 5-star conversation for a reason.
Yeah. Jason, when a guy like Ojo and Doug, good morning to you. Good to see you. Throwing some emojis at us. We appreciate you. Thanks everybody for jumping in. Jason, when a guy like this goes to one of these camps, do they work Ojo strictly at a left tackle spot, or do they move him back and forth to look at a right tackle possibility and a left tackle? How does that work?
Most guys, there's some movement. Felix did play both sides. Aiden Crimpin played both sides. You'll see some guys maybe even play some guard and tackle. So yeah, there's some movement. I do remember Michael Fasusi last year. Chad, I saw him at several camps, Under Armour, Rivals, regional and national type events. I never saw him lose a rep, and finally he lost a reps one camp, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Mike, you just lost. That's the first time I've ever seen you lose. And he goes, yeah, but I was playing right tackle. I'm a left tackle. I was, okay, that makes sense. And it's kind of like, Orange Bloods members know about this, but Kelvin Banks went down to the Under Armour All-American game, and they had to play him at right tackle instead of left tackle. Well, everything's backwards there. So he didn't have a great week down there. And I saw it too with my own eyes. He struggled a little bit, but Rivals famously, or infamously, I guess, dropped him in the rankings out of 5-star status. And Orange Bloods has never let the national recruiting guys forget that. So, and nor should they, I guess, because you look at how Kelvin Banks' career went at Texas. But to answer your question, yeah, they do move those guys around, but Felix primarily lined up at left tackle.
Interesting. Okay, so that would lead me to this question. If I'm a Longhorn fan, and obviously I'm going to be as greedy as I can, I'd love to have Ojo and Turntine. Let's say they get them both, Jason. Both can't play left tackle.
Yeah.
Perfect world. They're both in the same class. Is there one of the two for you that would be more likely, you think, to kick over to right tackle and then get your bookends like you need them? Is there one over the other?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would think just because his frame, Felix would probably be more the traditional left tackle, but Turntine's so good. It's not like Turntine's small. I mean, what do we have Turntine? Let me find him. He is listed at 6'4", 317. So he's a little more compact. Felix is more spread out. But 6'4", 317 is not small.
No.
But Turntine's just so good and so technical too, and he's athletic too. Yeah, I'd probably say maybe Turntine just because his frame's a little more compact and Felix is more of your traditional left tackle frame. But that would have to be sorted out once they got on campus. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that.
Interesting. All right. So Felix Ojo, a big part of this camp in all kinds of ways. So Jason, in terms of, I guess, kind of, summing up the discussion, whatever was in your mind, and obviously you've done a lot of these camps and stuff, and maybe you got expectations walking in, maybe you don't. But in terms of what you were thinking for Ojo, it sounds like he may have hit and exceeded. Like, did you walk out of there going, man, I knew he was really good, but I think he's better than I thought he was. Was that the response?
He kind of met my expectations. And the reason is, Chad, I went in with really high expectations after seeing him at the All-American Bowl, the Navy All-American Bowl, and seeing him compete and hold up really well down there against elite guys, most of whom were a year older than him. So like if you'd asked me this question in January when I went to San Antonio, I'd say, oh yeah, he exceeded my expectations, but he set the bar pretty high down there. So I went into this one thinking, okay, he's probably going to be one of, if not the best player at this camp. And he did meet those expectations. We haven't even talked about the recruiting elements of it. He does have a Texas official visit set for June 13th. That's the only official visit he has. And I think that's important to note. Okay. Texas set that up whenever he was in town for the junior day. Kyle Flood was very proactive, was smart, got that set up. He wants to take official visits. He's got like a top 8, but he said the ones he mentioned to me for official visits, obviously Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, he said probably would get a visit. There's some talk, maybe this is a Texas Ohio State battle right now, which is interesting because Michigan and Ole Miss were really high up there, but maybe Ohio State's kind of surged up there into the kind of that co-leader, if you will, maybe second spot behind Texas. And I thought it was interesting, Chad, one other comment. I actually asked Felix, I said, hey, when I look at you, I see some similarities, like, because I covered Kelvin Banks at these camps too, right? In their frame, Felix is a little taller, but just the way they move, just their style of play. I said, I see some similarities. I said, have the Texas coaches ever mentioned that to you? And he goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, he goes, that's exactly what they've told me, is that I'm a lot like Kelvin Banks in my development at this stage of my career, in the way that they're going to need offensive tackles by the time I get there. I mean, you got Trevor Gooseby set to take over right now, but beyond him, it's pretty unproven. So he said, they've told me I could be like a Kelvin Banks and come down there, A, with the way we play, but B, maybe even be a freshman contributor, possibly even a freshman starter. So I thought that was interesting that the Texas coaches kind of said to him kind of what I saw when I sit here and watch Felix work out. I mean, I see some natural comparisons to him and Kelvin Banks.
And then, Jason, you kind of laid out some of those other teams. Obviously, with the Fasusi story, we've talked about this. There was clearly a team in the region that Texas needed to be concerned about, and it was Oklahoma. And they end up with Fasusi. Doesn't sound like there's a lot in the region Texas needs to worry about. Would you agree with that?
Well, Oklahoma's involved, but yeah, it's more going to be, I think it'd be Texas, Ohio State. If I'm ranking them right now, it'd be Texas, probably Ohio State, then Michigan,
Okay.
then Ole Miss, then maybe Oklahoma fifth. So, he does want to visit Oklahoma officially, so that can shake things up, and those official visits will obviously move the needle. But I would put Texas slightly out in front on that one right now.
Interesting. All right. One of my favorite chatters, David Keith, has a good technical question for you here, Jason. And we will hit that right after we give Specs some love. Thanks to y'all for jumping in the Specs chat. They've got a wine sale going on at Specs. Here's your reminder.
With hundreds of wines on sale, Specs is turning these aisles into the ultimate love story.
Uncork something special during Specs' huge wine sale going on now. Specs, the fun starts.
There it is. Message for all you Specs winos out there. All right. David Keith says, Jason, I think Max Wright is a good recruit, but it seems Texas is in a good or very good position for up to 4 tackles that are significantly better than Wright. And he continues, do you think Wright may have been accepted into the class too soon, similar to multiple recruits that committed then decommitted from Texas over the past 3 recruiting classes?
Yeah, normally, listen, I'm in lockstep with David Keith on his takes, but this one I'm going to disagree a little bit. Max Wright's a really good player, man. I mean, his ceiling, we'll see what he hits, but I mean, his ceiling could be just about as high as anybody in this class. I mean, he's legit 6'8". He's right at what do we have Maximus at? 305 pounds. I talked to someone who knows him well, has ties to Melissa, and they said he's not Trevor Gooseby in his athleticism, but Max moves pretty well for his size. So he's really intriguing. And what I like, I mean, he's ranked number 126 on the Rivals 250. So he's not too far behind a guy like Cody Green that we talked about. So I don't know that those other guys are significantly better than him. I mean, you got guys like Ojo and Turntine who are ranked quite a bit higher. I get it. But what I like about Max Wright, I don't think he's a guy that's going to decommit. This guy is 100% locked in with Texas. He's a no BS kind of guy. Doesn't care about all the hoopla and the suspense and the drama. He's a really, really good player. I think people need to pay attention. He's a really, really good player. And he's not a guy that's going to scare off other recruits because he's just, he's not a huge name like a John Turntine is. If you get Turntine, some other tackles may be like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to go to this other school because they have more of an open depth chart. Max Wright he's going to come in and compete for that starting job. And, I'm not going to say he's going to win it someday, but it wouldn't shock me if he did. But Max Wright is not going to scare off Felix Ojo and John Turntine. But, actually, David Keith, I think Max Wright, to answer your question, I think he was a perfect early take for that reason. He's a really good player. He's not going to mess around. I don't think, and I don't think he's going to look at other school. He told me he's not going to take any other visits. He's shutting down the recruiting process. And, he's a good player, but he's not a huge name that's going to maybe push some other guys to look elsewhere.
David Keith, we always appreciate you checking the shows out and giving us
sorry, Chad.
Yeah.
Man, I feel about Max Wright kind of I did when the quarterback Trey Owens they took after Arch. I was like, he was the perfect player to come in after Arch. He was locked in with Texas. I said it all along. I said, that dude's underrated. I thought Trey Owens was a really good player. I think we've seen that in the snippets of it in practice and stuff. And he wasn't a guy that was, maybe going to scare off other guys behind him. Okay. And then the classes behind him. He was the perfect kind of bridge quarterback after Arch Manning. And, I get it. Quarterback, offensive lineman, totally different. But, Max Wright kind of fits some of those same criteria for me. I think he's an underrated player. He's a really good player, tremendous upside. And having Max Wright on the commitment list is still going to allow you to successfully recruit other players around him.
David Keith, thank you for that chat. Jason, anything else on Ojo before we move on to some maybe some other names from the camp?
No, just that we talked about the junior day visit a little bit, and the highlight he reiterated was the player panel. He said, I really got a chance to kind of ask these players about Kyle Flood. What's he like? And he said it was really good to get their perspective. And it's funny. He said that the players told him, hey, Kyle Flood is, when he's not around, like on the field or around parents, he's, a lot more laid back, cuts up a little bit, but he really cares about you. I've seen Kyle Flood coach on the field. I've been at practices. He is intense. He doesn't mess around out there, but you can also see he has a really good sense of humor. And I think that's what the players kind of told Ojo. Hey, man, he's going to coach you hard. He's going to coach you up and develop you, but he's also going to love you away from the field, develop you as a person, and has a good sense of humor. But it was funny. He said, when the parents aren't around, he's a lot more laid back. So
yeah. We talked about it on this show, Jason. I love that the kids want to get that realistic with it. What's the coach like when my mom leaves? Right? That's just a different vibe. Every great coach or teacher you ever had is probably great, but one of the reasons might be that your parents weren't sitting in the back of the classroom, watching how he or she treats you. So I thought that was an interesting detail for a guy like Ojo. All right, Jason, for people that have not been there, go check out orangebloods.com, not only for the 3-2-1 column, but back on, I think Sunday is when you put this out. Yes, Sunday evening, Jason put out a lot of good info on some of his thoughts about the guys. It does start with Felix Ojo, but there's also other guys on that list. Jason, is there a clear name for you that comes next? I know we've talked already about Boobie Feaster this week on the Modcast and others. Is Feaster the next name for you, or is there somebody else?
Probably Boobie, for people who didn't see the Modcast yesterday. I mean, Boobie's always I know you like talking about Boobie, Chad. So
I do. Yes, I do. I do. And Jason, your update on Boobie Feaster, frankly, did not get me super excited, because I would love to be able to talk about Boobie Feaster for a few more years. But right now, the realistic thought you're getting after visiting the camp here is that it's not like this is certainly not a runaway for Texas in by any stretch.
No, not at all. Boobie showed up with his Texas backpack that I think he's been carrying that thing around for about a year or something. So I was like, Boobie, what's up? You still got that Texas backpack? And he's like, yeah, but after talking to him after the camp, I mean, Texas is still in the race. I mean, he said Texas will probably get an official visit, but he said he knows LSU, Texas A&M, and Southern Cal are going to get official visits. And he kind of was like, my fourth one will probably be to Texas. Okay. But then if you ask him about, Texas and Chris Jackson, he raves about him and Sark's offense and Chris Jackson's development and the fact that Jackson has played in the NFL and coached in the NFL. But Texas, I get the sense Texas is running fourth there. They've kind of dipped back a little bit. In talking to Boobie, I mean, there's a lot of young talent on that Texas roster, and Boobie's not afraid of competition. So this is a guy that's been going out to these camps since he was a freshman and, competing with guys who are maybe in eighth grade, he came out to some of these camps. So competing with guys who are 3-4 years older than him. So he's not necessarily afraid of competition, but it's also a business decision, right? If you're going to a school and they've got 3 or 4 elite young receivers, like, okay, that's going to be pretty crowded. I might not get on the field as early. So he's looking at that. He has some, I wouldn't say concerns, but just some questions about, hey, is Chris Jackson going to go back to the NFL? I don't know who's telling him that. I don't know where he's getting that from, but that was something he brought up. So I thought that was interesting. But, Texas is in the race, Chad, for sure, but still in the race. But I think it's LSU and A&M are the top 2 right now.
Yeah. And by the way, Matt, hey, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. These are the kind of things I would miss over and over again. So if Boobie Feaster's watching today, Boobie, come on, man. Come on. Let's reconsider. Reconsider if you're not considering. But that'll be fun to see where that one ends up. And of course, if everybody has not caught the biggest detail with Boobie Feaster over the last week, why so much talk? He reclassified. So from 27 to 26. And that's a huge part of the discussion, but he was a part of the camp as well.
And he said, hey, that kind of escalates things for him because, now he's going to take his official visits. He's going to try to commit probably this summer. He said maybe in September, like the first part of the season, if he can't come to a decision this summer. So, I mean, everything gets moved up, right, with him reclassifying. So, now 2 months ago, it was like, okay, yeah, Boobie you got a long way to go with Boobie. Well, no, now we're in the thick of things right now with official visits coming up, spring visits, things like that.
So, Jason, as I look at this list, as you were coming out of the camp, I see KJ Edwards' name, the Carthage running back. Was Osborne there as well, or was it just Edwards?
Just Edwards in terms of Texas targets. Yeah, JVN did not make it.
Give us an update on KJ Edwards. We'll hit this and maybe get you to talk receivers as well. But I know Texas fans are always going to be focused in on the running back discussion. How did KJ look?
Looked good. He always does. And these kind of settings are tailor-made for him because he's so quick and explosive. This one's a little tricky because Texas doesn't have a running backs coach, right? So he was supposed to visit Texas on June 13th. Then it got moved up to maybe June 6th. He's still going to take a Texas official visit. He's trying to figure out when exactly that would be. He has, I'm looking at my notes, official visits set up to Texas, Texas A&M, SMU, and Baylor. Doesn't have any plans for like spring visits, but I would not be surprised. Texas will try to get him on campus once they get that new coach hired, once the dead period lifts, just to kind of get him acquainted with the new coach before he comes in for an official visit. So, A&M is really pushing hard for him, he said. The fact that he still likes Texas enough that he knows he's going to take an official visit there, even without knowing who the running backs coach is going to be. That tells you just how strong his interest in Texas is. I did say he has a commitment date of August 2nd, so keep that date filed away. But yeah, things are kind of with him and JV and Osborne. Things are kind of very much up in the air until we figure out who this running backs coach is going to be. Till these running backs connect with that coach and start to kind of bond with him. Whoever Sark hires will do a good job. Both those Javion and KJ both like Texas well enough that, Texas will be a factor. But KJ said, hey, man, I'm big on relationships. And he's told me that before. So whoever this new coach comes in is going to have to work quickly on developing that relationship.
Yeah, by the way, August 2nd, the second anniversary of Orange Bloods Live. KJ's a big fan. He just wants to celebrate with his decision day being on that day.
So this, I didn't see this, but Spiegs, who's Sam Spiegelman on Armour show, sounds like KJ wants to be at Texas. Yeah, I would not disagree with that, Ben. I've kind of said, I think individually Texas is the leader for KJ Edwards. I think individually Texas is the leader for JV and Osborne. There was a time not too long ago, back in the fall, I thought KJ might be a super early commitment. That dude shows up all the time for Texas. But now with this running back thing, the coaching thing, that kind of unsettles things a bit. But I still think Texas is in a really good spot there.
Yeah, and in terms of, I know I think it was on House Divided when Ketch was kind of looking, Jason, at early responses from, guys like Osborne, Edwards, and then, of course, there was the number one running back overall in this class that canceled an official visit.
Xavier Crowell,
Crowell coming off of it. And Ketch was kind of breaking down those reactions and what it might tell you. But overall, you would tell a Texas fan right now, KJ Edwards is going to give Texas every opportunity to hire a new running backs coach, and he's going to be willing to, make a new relationship.
Yeah, and they'll hit the ground running probably as soon as, maybe even before that guy's announced he might be on the phone with KJ and JV. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I still, even not knowing who the running backs coach is going to be, I still fully expect Texas to get one of those two. Who would I lean to? I don't really know. It's really close. Could Texas get both? I thought it was possible with Tashard Choice on staff. It may be a little tougher now. It will be a little tougher now, but that's not out of the realm of possibility that Texas could still get both those guys.
Jason, in terms of receivers that were at the camp, I see a couple names on your list. Any big time receivers worth talking about? Anybody stand out?
Boobie, of course. Zion Robinson is a guy out of Mansfield that Texas has offered, but they're not pushing too hard there. Duncanville tight end. He's kind of a tight end wide receiver. Zachary Turner. He's a guy that Texas has offered. It wasn't the deepest receiver or DB group that I've seen at those camps. There were a handful of guys with Texas offers at receiver, but honestly, Boobie was probably the main guy. A couple guys that we were hoping, like Caden Finley wasn't able to make it. A couple guys that were on the list as possibilities to show up didn't wind up making it. So that was a bit disappointing. But
gotcha. And in terms of a Texas discussion, no quarterbacks to really speak of, correct?
No, there was Peyton Houston, who's a quarterback in the 2027 class. I didn't even talk to Peyton just because I had just interviewed him after the Texas Junior Day. He's still young. I can get him on the phone too, but he's so young. But that's a dude who, listen, he looked really, really good for one. I mean, someone asked me who are the best players at the camp, and obviously Felix Ojo, but he was one that I mentioned as well because he's a bit undersized by traditional standards. He's not 6'4", but man, that was the first time I'd really seen him. I'd seen him before. I guess that was the first time I really paid attention to him in a camp setting because he was the one quarterback that I was watching pretty closely. And man, he has got a live arm, Chad. He looked really, really good. So, he's a guy that has a Texas offer in the 2027 class. Peyton Houston. He's got offers. He's from Louisiana. He's going to will have offers from anywhere he wants. But he's been to Texas a ton, including for that Junior Day. So I think Texas is very much in the mix there. If they push for Peyton Houston, I think there's a good chance he could be, maybe be that guy in that 2027 cycle.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind for the 2027 group. And I know you had a note on Orange Bloods about another 2027 guy. Before we get to that, Jason, anybody else you want to mention from the camp? We've hit a few names already. Anybody else that really stood out to you?
Yeah, we can touch on Zane Rowe. He's the 2027 DN / tight end out of Denton Guyer, former Oklahoma commitment. He was at the Texas Junior Day. Really likes Texas a lot. Did say Oklahoma's still in the mix. They're still in the picture. But he's going to narrow his list down pretty soon. He said, hey, Texas absolutely is in there, makes the cut there. A couple guys, Chad, that I talked to that I think things are trending away from Texas, and I think it's kind of by design. This is more Texas than them. But KJ Ford, the defensive end from Duncanville, 6 months ago, everybody thought, okay, that guy just seems to fit at Texas. He's the next Colin Simmons. He's going to wind up at Texas. No, not much going on with Texas and KJ Ford right now. And then Beck is a linebacker out of Carthage. So that's it, KJ Edwards' teammate. So we'll see if that could impact things. But Texas and Beck kind of in a holding pattern right now, which is really opening the door for A&M there. So if A&M gets Beck, does that help A&M with KJ Edwards? We'll see. But both those recruitments I think are kind of trending away from Texas, but it may be Texas kind of trending away from them a little bit to be accurate. So, but just not a lot going on with either of those guys right now in regards to Texas.
Interesting. And if you want to check out, some of the latest info, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, I'll throw up the QR code for orangebloods.com here. Jason's 321 article, the notes specifically about the camp. Also, this next note that we're going to talk about, Jason, you threw up something. I can't remember if it went out last night or today, but about Braylon Williams.
Yeah, this morning.
Yeah. Give us the update here. This is a 2027 kid, correct?
2027 out of Arlington Lamar. He is just a linebacker through and through. I mean, this guy will thump you and hit you hard. So, I mean, he's a traditional, probably a middle linebacker. He's in the Rivals 100. There was a time, Chad, when he was kind of in that 5-star conversation. He's dropped a little bit. I think he's 70-something in the rankings right now. The Rivals 100, 72, number 72 nationally in the rankings. So still an elite player, talking to Rivals 100 guy. Braylon, he's a fun guy to cover. He's very honest, very upfront. He came in for a Texas game in September, seems like forever ago. And out of that visit, he told me, and he's told me since then, hey, Texas is my leader. They're the team to beat for me. Well, I talked to him after the camp on Sunday, and he did have a good camp, by the way. And those camps are tricky for linebackers because it's all about them being in coverage. There's not any pads. You can't get your hands and jam the receiver or the running backs or the tight end. So it's not really made for linebackers to stand out, but I thought Braylon Williams did pretty well from the reps I saw him take. But he did tell me on Sunday, hey, it's Texas and Texas A&M now. So A&M's really come on there. He wants to get out to visit both those schools in the spring once his dead period lifts in a couple weeks. Maybe Oregon too. SMU's involved there. I think ultimately, Chad, that one comes down to Texas and Texas A&M. I think it's pretty clear right now. It's a 2-team race. And I know it's early. He's only 27, but he did say, hey, he's probably going to commit like after his junior season. So we're talking, November, December. He wants to decide really early. So this spring and summer will be big for Braylon Williams. Really talked up Johnny Nansen quite a bit, but A&M has really surged there. Depending on who you talk to, there's some chatter that maybe A&M might have the slightest of leads right now for Braylon Williams. So, Texas will work to get him on campus this spring. Johnny Nansen's doing a good job there. We'll just have to see how it unfolds.
A house divided battle for a badass linebacker. That
Yeah.
sounds familiar. That sounds familiar and sounds like the way it ought to be. That's the way it should be. That's good stuff. And you said Arlington Lamar is the school, is that right?
Yeah, Arlington Lamar.
There you go, from another kid from the Dallas area. So we'll keep an eye peeled for that. All right. So as we come out of, we talked about the camp from last weekend, Jason, and again, go check out Jason's notes on everything at orangebloods.com. Schedule wise, Jason, what's next in recruiting here? I know we're in February, which is the dead period time by definition, but what's next on your radar in terms of recruiting?
It's pretty quiet for the next couple of weeks. There is an Elite 11 has a camp. It's actually here in Austin. They did it last year too, which those used to all be about only the quarterbacks, right? Well, no, last year they brought in some, you have some receivers, of course, but they brought in some linemen and stuff too. So that I don't have actually I do have it. It's in mid-March, or actually late March, March 22nd. So that's kind of the next big recruiting event. This year, there used to be a time, Chad, when rivals would do 2 camps, one in Dallas and one in Houston. Boom, boom, back-to-back weekends. Under Armour would do them back-to-back weekends. So I was just on the go nonstop. This year, things have kind of staggered. Like Under Armour had their camp in Dallas area last week. Their Houston camp is not until April. So things are kind of staggered a little bit more this year, which gives me a little bit of breathing room. Obviously, we'll have spring football, spring visits. I expect Texas will have, probably a junior day type of deal. Usually they'll do something like that in April, bring guys in to watch practice and do like a crawfish boil or whatever. So there'll be a lot of events going on, but the next big camp type thing is actually not until mid-March, or later March, I should say, for that Elite 11 camp.
There you go. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Started with Felix Ojo, rolled through a lot of the guys at the camp, and also the note on Braylon Williams there at the end. Jason, anything else you want to hit today here in the recruiting hour before we wrap up?
I'm scrolling through. I think we've pretty much covered everything. I tell you, there's a couple of guys I'll just touch on real quickly.
Okay.
Drew Evers is another offensive lineman that Texas has offered. He's at a Flower Mound. He was at the junior day. Texas is in play there. He likes Texas a lot. He talks up Texas a lot when you talk to him. Really good kid, really good interview. But I get the sense that Texas is behind the lead pack there. He's got visits set up to A&M, SMU. I think he just set one up today, maybe for, I think it was Ohio State. So he said to me, yeah, Texas will get an official visit. But I feel like that one's, kind of touch and go. We'll see if Texas brings him in. I think if Texas wants to bring him in, they can get him in for a visit. But I do think Texas has ground to make up there. And then Frisco Panther Creek defensive back Donovan Webb, who holds a Texas offer, he was the defensive back MVP, and he was really, really good, man. He was really good at this camp. He doesn't have a Texas official visit set up yet. Let me look at this. He's got SMU, Texas Tech, and Ohio State, but I think Texas will get an official visit. He grew up a fan of Texas, so you get that going for you. He's also a teammate of 2027 recruit Jalen Lott, who we've talked about. He's kind of the receiver DB who, for my money, man, is one of the best players in the state in 2027. I mean, he's an elite player. And Donovan Webb said, yeah, he and Jalen do talk about, hey, man, they're like really close friends, and the idea of playing together in college would be really neat. So keep an eye on Donovan Webb, not a guy we've talked about a ton because he's a fairly new offer, but he's a guy to keep an eye on for this class, in this 2026 class. as a defensive back for the Longhorns.
There you go. Never hurts to have a really talented buddy that may want to go to the same school, huh? That's not that can always work out. We want to thank everybody for jumping in on the chat. Also, we want to thank John and the crew at Longhorn Wealth Management. We always talk about John and his connection to Texas. In fact, he served for 15 years as the Dallas Texas Exes board member. He's now helping lead the build out of the Collin County Texas Exes chapter. And we tell you, he's following this Longhorn stuff closely. He was sending us messages about the Under Armour camp up in Melissa. He's really excited about the momentum that the Longhorns are building for that 2026 class. He wants to help all OB fans build their own wealth development momentum. So you can take advantage of John's offer. Free 90-minute private consultation. He'll show you how a certified financial planner like John and his crew can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your legacy. You can either call John and the team at Longhorn Wealth at 972-707-4900 or go online to longhornwealth.net. Schedule that free 90-minute private consultation today. We appreciate the great support there. Also, shout out to that beautiful Longhorn that posed for that picture. Longhorn Wealth Management. All right, Jason, anything else? Did we hit it all?
No, we just got a super chat.
Oh, Matt, just favorite snow cone flavor.
Most random super chat ever, Matt.
Definitely is.
Yeah, it had to be random. Well, you said in the chat. Well, I'll let you go first, Chad. What's your favorite snow cone? I do love a snow cone, by the way. So
yeah, Matt, first one I ever fell in love with was at the Walt Snow Cone stand in Waxahachie. It's no longer there. Rest in peace. It was called the Count Dracula, and it was all the reds put together. So it was strawberry, cherry, black cherry. It was every red they could think of, they put together. That's the first snow cone I fell in love with.
Yeah, we're kind of similar, man. I like a raspberry type thing sometimes, or a black cherry. So we're not too dissimilar in that way. But dude, you give me a good snow cone, I don't care what flavor it is, I'm gonna eat it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker, Matt, for the combo flavor when you make a legit combo and then give it a weird name. I know that shocks y'all about me, but give it a weird name, make it good. I'll eat that snow cone forever. Matt, thank you for the strange question. At the end of the show, we do always appreciate that. Look at this. See, there's somebody else. Got to be the blue coconut with cream from Snow Beach.
Yeah, and somebody else, maybe another chatter said blue coconut with cream. I don't love coconut, but what the hell? If it's on a snow cone, I'd probably eat it. So.
Yeah, it sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. I like the idea. I've had some good coconut stuff. Banana and coconut.
Who's taking snow cones on a day when it's like 15 degrees outside, Matt? By the way, like, what's good?
It's like the counteractive thing. You're trying to. Yeah, sometimes you lean into it. I guess you could go the other way and talk.
Yeah, we need like hot chocolate questions or something, man.
I'm trying to think of hot times today. Maybe that's what it is. Think of warm weather on a cold weather day. We do hope everybody is staying warm and safe and sound today, as it is cold snapping big time around the state of Texas and maybe where you are too. So we hope everybody is doing well. A reminder, we got House Divided coming up at noon. Jeff Ketchum back in the fold here at Orange Bloods Live. Football with Friends at 6. We got an Outsiders tonight at 8:30. We're going to talk about your 5 favorite Longhorn basketball players. Not the best ones ever, your favorites. So all you Gabe Manecki and Brandy Perryman fans, come on. Let's go. We're going to talk about some of your favorites over the years. Then tomorrow morning, it's the old-fashioned with Anwar Richardson. Thank you guys for jumping in. We'll be back next Wednesday with another recruiting hour, the very latest in recruiting, because it never, ever stops. And check out orangebloods.com. As I mentioned, we will throw that up one more time. The 321 article from Jason, the notes from the camp, all kinds of great intel at orangebloods.com. Like always, great time to get signed up right now. There is your QR code to get signed up with orangebloods.com. Thanks again to Longhorn Wealth Management Group for being our great sponsor here on the Recruiting Hour. Y'all take care until next week. It's the Recruiting Hour here on